Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast.
Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is David Yovanno. A seasoned media and technology executive, David Yovanno joined Impact in February 2017 and has been providing strategic leadership to premier SaaS companies in the MarTech space for 20 years. David brings deep operational expertise and a proven track record of growing companies through key phases of fiscal development. Before joining Impact, David was a CEO of Marin Software, a San Francisco-based global leader in paid search SaaS technology. Prior to Marin Software, he was the president, technology solutions of Conversant, a diversified marketing services company, and CEO of Gigya, a SaaS customer identity management platform. David has also served on the board of the Interactive Advertising Bureau and as Lieutenant and Chief Information Officer in the United States Navy. Well, good afternoon, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I appreciate you jumping on, Dave. This is amazing. Love your background. And of course, we're going to jump into the questions and share with our audience your amazing story. So first of all, you have quite the background. First, serving the military. Thank you for your service. We're both veterans, thank you.
Awesome.
You were Chief Information Officer, you're a president, you're the Chief Executive Officer, and now you're the CEO for Impact. Could you share with our audience what drives you and what has contributed to your success?
Sure. I think my family upbringing had a lot to do with it. It was based on a very strong work ethic, a lot of middle class, blue collar sort of setting. Always had a job since I was young. I always cut lawns, paper route, started at McDonald's when I was 14. I was a busboy. I was a waiter for many years, all throughout high school and college. And I really believe that serving people and dealing with people in food service has really helped me to relate to people just generally on a human level. I mean, I remember spilling a glass of ice water down someone's back when I was putting some water on the table and just watching him cringe, and then somehow, turning that around to still getting a tip, for the work there. So, just relating to people on that sort of level. I was a lieutenant in the Navy, as you mentioned. I think the military instilled attention to detail, structure, discipline. I went to boot camp in San Diego right out of high school. And again, it just exposed me to people literally from every walk of life. It taught us how to work as a team, regardless of who you were or where you came from. The military does a really good job of getting that chip off your shoulder, breaking you down to a very humble level. Everyone's head gets shaved. You're wearing ridiculously long pants rolled up until, they hem them a week later. You get yelled at, you get punished. But then they build you back up as a team. I think that was a unique experience when I look back. The military also trained me to be an officer. So, kind of learn some leadership skills, the importance of planning, but also executing against a plan or a mission, which I think absolutely carries over to business. I'm a fan of Jim Collins. He advocates for at least three things: finding things that you're passionate about, things that you're uniquely wired for, and working on things where you can create the most value. And so for me, when the internet and tech was just getting going in the late 90s, I was so fired up about it. I studied computers and software for hours. I worked 2 jobs to buy my first computer. And I got into the tech industry because I was excited about it, not because there was a lot of money to be made. It wasn't really an established industry just yet. So, I think just drawing on my people skills, I developed, no doubt, in the food services early on. Then in the military, I played sports growing up and through college. So I enjoy competition. And so ultimately, I was just able to find my fit, leading teams, putting points on the board in business, and doing work that I was generally excited about.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing your story, Dave. It is appreciated. And you're right. Like many of us, we had to grow up, work, doing a paper route, working 2 jobs, or we joined the military, that sort of thing. So I appreciate your story and your background. And Dave, as you know, everybody globally has had to make these major pivots and shifts during this pandemic. Could you share with us what you're doing to help your organization stay relevant in this economy?
I remember a year ago when the pandemic first hit and people were working from home. We were one of the first companies, I think, in February even to just push to a remote work setup. I remember the parent Slack channel was lighting up, and it was parents at home with their kids climbing all over them. They're supposed to be on a Zoom call with a client. They honestly didn't know what to do, and it was a pretty simple message to the company, which is, put your kid on Zoom, introduce them to your customer. The customer's dealing with the same thing. Like, use this as an opportunity to, just kind of connect with people on a more authentic and real human level. We're all dealing with this sort of thing. And I think, that first message of just saying it's okay, I think relieved a lot of pressure. And with that type of communication, we began a weekly huddle on Zoom where the entire company every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, we get, 400 or 500 people on Zoom every week now for the last year and a half now, it seems, just catching up on, business activities and updates, anniversaries, promotions, spotlights. It's pretty good production. But that initial conversation, just keeping up the communication flow on a weekly basis, coming from the top and you're hearing from other leaders, I think really helped a lot. But we had a really important message early on, and it was do your best to be productive working from home, right? Everyone's got a different setup, but let's not let the business get COVID, right? And if we can do that, we're going to come out of this thing just fine. And I think that did a lot to kind of set us up to be productive and prove that we can do this and kind of turn this thing around. We did some other things. We provided a nominal, work from home stipend to get set up at home. As Zoom fatigue set in, we took a look at our meeting culture and just kind of rolled out kind of a new playbook or expectations on, hey, only be in a meeting if you have to. Standard meeting time should be less than a half an hour. We inserted deep work days, 2 days a week, where we're asking for there to be no meetings or minimal meetings, certainly no regular team scheduled meetings. And so just trying to relieve some pressure, just telling people it's okay, to work out during the day, to not being in a meeting, I think to help. One more thing is global holidays. And so, for the last couple of years, we have gotten into a cadence of the entire company is off for 2 full weeks between Christmas and New Year's. And there's a skeleton crew that's required to kind of keep the business operating because our clients still have demands and support that they need. But that was a key thing is getting everybody off at the same time, because the trick is if you're on vacation, work's still happening, you feel like you're not keeping up with your peers. But inserting global holiday around the holidays, but then there's a couple more days during the year where everyone's enjoying like a 3-day weekend together globally as a company. So I think we last year we had Diwali was kind of a holiday that the entire company celebrated together, and there were a few others that we inserted. I think that really helps. As we look to return to office spaces now at some point, maybe this year, we want to provide options and embrace a hybrid, remote combined with office work culture. Some people prefer to work remotely. Some people prefer to be in an office setting. We want to encourage it because I think at a human level, people do want to interact and be amongst their peers, but just find the right balance between the two.
That's something I hadn't heard yet, Dave, but I appreciate you sharing about, celebrating a global holiday together. That's one way to kind of recognize really everybody to be inclusive in your organization. I think that's certainly unique from my perspective. First time we've heard that here. So thanks again. And Dave, you're obviously leveraging some new and emerging tech in your tech stack, right? Is there anything you could share with us that might not be confidential or non-proprietary?
I know you have a tech background, Brian. I mean, maybe just a few high-level things. First, we're dealing with petabytes of data storage. We've been on a multi-year migration to more cloud-based services for data storage, for processing, for visualization. If you were to ask me 10 years ago, would we ever consider getting out of our own data centers and moving everything to the cloud? I would have said no way. But that has been not an emerging trend. It's definitely almost becoming the norm for high-tech companies that are dealing at this level. I mean, we're processing more than 50 billion of e-commerce sales a year. We're processing more than 2 billion a year in payments. We have 1,200 customers on our platform, large customers like eBay and Walmart. There's a lot of data flowing through it, and so we've really have an important update to our architecture being more cloud-based. I'd say besides that, streaming tech like Kafka and Spark streaming, we've adopted. There's been a clear trend towards microservices, like getting out of this monolithic infrastructure to kind of make it easier to develop in a more agile fashion. It's also essential to have a robust API infrastructure. Especially when you're dealing with more enterprise-sized clients, they want to continue to build some customization on top of our platform. Right, APIs help enable that. So those are just a few things I'd probably point out.
That's great. That's kind of the trend as well, Dave. I appreciate you sharing what you're leveraging there as far as technology. And you're right, a lot of people are moving to that microservices model to be more agile. So thanks again. And Dave, last question. Everybody wants to know a little bit more about Dave Yovanno. Can you share something from your career experience that would be helpful for those looking to grow their career in tech or leadership?
I'd say a key thing is to find a mentor or an advisor. Right. I've personally have, had a few of them in life. I think all the way back to college, I remember having a professor who told me that he could see me being a product manager at Procter & Gamble. I didn't know what that was. It led me to research that and, try and study and think about my own career path, maybe in that direction. So I think, a mentor or an advisor is going to challenge you. Like I had a great mentor during my time at a company called Conversant. I worked there a combined number of about 13 years. He was the CEO. His name is Jim Zarley. Just great coaching advice, business dealings, how to deal with people, what to focus on. And I think your needs for mentorship change throughout life. So always be thinking about how to complement, or how to build on, one mentor over another. But I'd say at any point in time, like latching onto a primary mentor is important. I'm so passionate about this point that I've at least 6 board advisors at Impact. We have Brett Queener, who built out the sales team at Salesforce for 15 plus years. Bill McAdis, CMO at companies like Slack, Salesforce, and Zendesk. Patrick McHugh, who runs channel partnerships at Okta. Michael Ewing from HubSpot. Shawnee's Hawkins, a great advisor to me and the company around DEI efforts. She's an author and a professor out of New York. And so what these individuals do is they just have tremendous experience and advice in domains or areas that, myself or the team, don't have. And to have them come in or to, just chat with them, once a quarter even. I think of it as like a grandparent. The grandparent comes in, roughs up the kids and then leaves. And the parents are responsible for dressing the kids, getting them fed and getting them off to school. Advisors are incredibly, incredibly helpful. They don't have to be there every day, but just give you some directional advice, I think is essential. And I would just say in general, as a leader, super important, especially in today's day and age, to make sure that you include, that you listen to, and you support people at every level. And that's a lot of what it means to be an empathetic leader or an empathetic professional, even as an individual contributor. I would encourage your listeners to find that Simon Sinek video on YouTube about empathy. You'll see a little bit about what I mean there. And then maybe just the last thing, lead from the front, like, get in the trenches with your teams. First of all, it's going to keep you sharp, right? And just knowing the market, having your ear on the pulse of the ground, what customers are saying, what they're complaining about, how they're objecting to your sales pitch, let's say. It's going to inform you, I think, on what should be a priority for the company. But almost even more importantly, your team's going to respect you more, right? Because you're in it with them. You're not asking them to do something that they're not willing, that you're not willing to do yourself. So just a couple tips I think could help.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate your share on what you're doing and what you've learned across your life and your career. And I know that somebody here will take that to heart. So thanks again. And Dave, I just want to let you know it was a pleasure having you on today. And I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Bye for now.